Hello, hello. This is Jacob Harkey. I'm here with Louis Repetto, and we are here to talk about some of the breaking news that has come out today. Scientologist actor Danny Masterson, who was convicted in May of this year on 2 counts of forcible rape and sentenced to 30 years to life in prison in September, has today, on December 27th, 2023, been moved from the jail that he was at in LA County to state prison in Kern County. And thank you, Lou.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes. Get in
Thanks
there,
for
Danny. Get in your forever home, Danny. You belong
it's about
there.
it's about time too. It didn't occur to me that it would take nearly this long after the sentencing for the move from
Finally, yeah.
jail to prison to actually happen, but better late than never.
Absolutely. And where is he is currently staying somewhere for a few hours and then he is going up to the Kern County today.
He was moved to Kern County today, and the prison system is fairly complicated. I've seen
Mm,
Aaron Smith Levin from Growing Up in Scientology go live with Tommy Scoville of the Lifeboat before, and I've also
mhm.
seen him go live with I think Nasty Nathaniel is his name, and they're a little bit more familiar with the prison system and the way that levels and points work based on the degree of your felony and the way that all of that actually the way that your crimes translate to what your sentence is going to be and what kind of prison you'll be at. I don't understand all of those details, but my understanding is that he is still currently, for the time being, going to be at a prison that's going to be kind of an in-between processing location while the state prison system reviews his case and decides what to do with him next. The whole legal system just moves so slowly.
I gotcha. But he is going in. I mean, he is actually moving to an actual prison today.
That's
So that's
correct. That's
different than where
correct.
he was, his little cozy jail. And
Exactly.
how did he end up there? For those of you who are watching who don't know about Danny Masterson, he was convicted. Tell us a little bit about that, Jacob.
Yeah, so just to help people understand what has gone on in this case, Danny Masterson is a Scientologist actor who's been a Scientologist for decades, and he is best known as an actor from his role on That 70s Show, and which was popular a few decades ago. And he was criminally charged in 2020 for 3 counts of forcible rape, which occurred between 2001 and 2003. And he was criminally tried twice. So in fall of 2022, his case went to trial, and the case ended with the jury being unable to reach a verdict and having a mistrial declared, a hung jury on all 3 counts. And the case was rescheduled, or the prosecuting attorneys decided to retry the following spring in this year, and that trial, that second criminal trial, resulted in Danny Masterson being found guilty on 2 counts. So, like I said, he was charged on 3 counts involving women who were called in court Jane Doe 1, Jane Doe 2, and Jane Doe 3. And for the counts involving Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2, the jury did rule that he was guilty. And for count 3, uh, the jury was not able to reach a unanimous verdict, so a mistrial was declared on that count. But each of the counts on which he was found guilty carried a potential sentence of 15 years to life. And so at his sentencing, which was September 7th, 2023, in which I actually attended, the judge sentenced him to 30 years to life. And my understanding as a layman who's still kind of understanding how the legal system works was that he would be moving from jail to prison almost as soon as that was over. The sentencing was over. I thought that the sentencing was kind of the last nail in the coffin that needed to be hit before the relocation could happen. But apparently it ended up still taking a few months. And so it wasn't until today, December 27th, that he actually was moved to his prison.
And that is Danny Masterson's Scientologist in good standing.
That is
Scientologist
true.
in good standing. There are
Yeah, yeah.
people that are being, their families are being broken up because they don't want to do Scientology. And those people that are breaking up, that are the ones that are saying, oh, we don't want to do Scientology. And then Scientology comes and declares them suppressive person, disconnects their whole family because they're evil. Yet we have a criminal found guilty of SAing multiple women in violent ways. My understanding of that is right. He did it in
Yes.
just not just it, but violent ways. Can you tell us a little bit about that part? Do you know?
Yeah, the specific details in each of the cases. Um, Jane Doe 1 uh, and Jane Doe 2, both of their incidents involved drugging, allegations of drugging that were brought in by the prosecuting attorneys. And Jane Doe 1 involved being removed with some force from a jacuzzi and being thrown into the jacuzzi and then brought upstairs into a shower where she was throwing up. I know some of the details are a lot to get into, but as you said, these are violent incidents. Same thing with Jane Doe 2. In Jane Doe 2's case, I know that he asked her to come to his house. She did, and he immediately handed her a drink to drink, said, "Drink this." She had just a few sips and immediately began to lose control. And some of the stories that she told about actually being in the bed with Danny Masterson were pretty brutal. And I wasn't actually in the courtroom as these stories were being
Sounds like a
told, but
monster.
absolutely. Yeah,
He's
just
getting 30
following
to life. That's exactly what he deserves.
completely. Yeah, the stories that I was hearing told by the journalists and the activists who were in the courtroom actually listening to the testimony as it was being said, it sounded just really awful to even have to hear it. Being in the courtroom myself as I was there when they were reading their victim impact statements on September 7th at his sentencing, I could tell that this man had really done some horrible things to stick with
And he
the
is
people
a
whose lives he impacted.
very devious monster. And the Church of Scientology is still seeing him as a Scientologist in good standing. So even like from my understanding, the Jane Does were not even allowed to come forward in regards to their crimes when they had told. In regards to Danny's crimes, when they told the Church of Scientology in confidence, isn't that right?
Well, yeah, and as an so I was not a Scientologist. I know that you were, but you may even be able to talk about just the specific volumes. There are because there are policies that indicate that it's considered a high crime in Scientology to report another Scientologist to law enforcement or to civil authorities. A high crime meaning, as you said, that can get you declared a suppressive person, and
And
getting
how'd that work in
declared.
the courtroom though? Like, how did that play a part in the case? Do you
So it
know?
played yeah, it played we got to hear a little bit more about it in the second trial, because in the first trial, the judge was really limiting how much Scientology related content would be allowed to be brought into the courtroom. And she noted that some Scientology content could be brought in to explain why these women didn't come forward earlier, because like I said, the incidents which Masterson was charged and convicted for occurred between 2001 and 2003. So obviously, it took a few decades for those to actually be heard in the courtroom in front of a jury. And the judge in the first trial allowed a limited amount of Scientology related content to come in, just enough so that it could explain why the women didn't come forward earlier. But in the first trial, Judge Olmedo did not allow the prosecuting attorneys to bring in a Scientology expert witness, which they wanted to do. In the second trial, the judge did allow for a Scientology
But
expert
that's
witness to
because
come
they had
in.
the book in the evidence. But
Yeah,
that was
that was
because of the
actually
offense. Or
yeah.
what was that? Defense? Go ahead. You go.
Yeah, the book. So I think what you're referring to during the preliminary hearings, there was something interesting that happened where Tom Mesereau was Danny Masterson's defense attorney,
Mhm.
and Tom Mesereau attempted to bring in the book Introduction to Scientology Ethics to prove that there was nothing in there that would have prevented the women from coming forward. And at the following hearing, the
Mm.
next day after, um, after Mr. Mesereau did this, the prosecuting attorney, Reinhold Mueller, actually said, "Can I borrow that?" He took the book, and they were able to identify the part of the book that indicated that it was a high crime to report another Scientologist to law
Yeah,
enforcement.
and that's in the
So
list of there's a section in the Introduction to Scientology Ethics book which lists all of the misdemeanors, crimes, high crimes that apply for a Scientologist, and these are things that are done that if, you could face an internal justice system from the Church of Scientology. So if you do enough crimes, you could get what's called a court of ethics. If you do enough high crimes, you could get what's called a committee of evidence and potentially become declared a suppressive person. These justice actions taken to this list. On the list is one of the crimes, and a high crime is that you cannot report another Scientologist to the legal authorities without going first through Scientology's internal system called the International Justice Chief. And once you get his okay, then you can report another Scientologist. Well, these Jane Does, they did go. The first Jane Doe did come to the Church of Scientology, did ask Mike Ellis, which was the International Justice Chief, and they just prolonged it. They tried to suppress her to not report Danny Masterson to the authorities, but she did it anyways, and that is probably what ultimately, the fact that she did do it despite the church saying, hey, you can't, that's a high crime if you do it without our permission, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. As you were saying, all of the women, or specifically Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 3, they both did go to the church and did report Danny Masterson as they're supposed to, or as their alternative to going to the police, because that's what they're not supposed to do. Jane Doe 3 reported to Miranda Scoggins in LA, and Jane Doe 1 reported her crimes to Julian Swartz, who has come to become a fairly well-known name among people who pay attention to Scientology's abuses and allegations.
He's one of
But
their enforcers. He's an
definitely, yeah,
enforcer.
exactly. Did you
Yeah.
know him personally?
Yes, I knew him. I worked with him. I did one of the jobs that he does. I did that for a couple years. So I did it, and he was doing his job, the enforcer job, for the public parishioners of Scientology. And his job was to see any public that were creating out, that were creating problems for the Church of Scientology's image. So if a public was
Gotcha.
doing that, he would see them. That's not the only people that he saw. He would also see people within the church, like parishioners who gave off transgressions that were done that were crimes or illegal. And then he would help to squash and or keep those all internally within the Church of Scientology. So some of the tools that Julian Schwartz had to suppress people's speech within the church is called the non-interbulation order. In this order is a piece of paper, and it says on there your name. And if you do any more interbulating, they call it, which is like upsetting other people regarding a matter or at all, you could get instantly declared suppressive person, which means you are scapegoated, and no one in Scientology is allowed to talk to you, and you could be sued out of existence and destroyed using Scientology's fair game policies.
Gosh, that's so
You were saying
brutal.
about Julian Swartz.
Yeah, exactly. And everything that
Mhm.
you just said definitely tracks with my understanding of the kinds of things that he would be tasked with doing, because exactly like you were saying, focused on Scientology's image and making sure that nothing's going on with public parishioners that's going to impact Scientology's image externally. And this is an example of something that a big Scientologist actor, who's a recognizable name even in the world outside of Scientology, it could be bad news for Scientology if that were to get out to the public. So Scientology, through their ethics officers like Miranda Scoggins and Julian Swartz,
Enforcers,
these,
yeah.
yeah, these are the people who are tasked with putting Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 3 through ethics programs where they, as I understand it, they were essentially forced to go through hours of interrogation about what they've done wrong to cause this to happen to them. And essentially, because they were still
Yes.
believers in Scientology, they would look up to and respect people who are in a high position like Julian Swartz and
Yes.
Miranda Scoggins, and they would submit and they would say what their ethics officer wants to hear. And that's
Mhm.
essentially what happened and why these attacks were able to be swept under the rug for as long as they were.
Right, and what you're talking about there, ethics programs and interrogations, those are all just words in Scientology. Ethics program is something that Julian Schwartz, he'd write 10 separate steps. And the first step would be read ethics, justice, and the dynamics, and a reference inside the introductory to Scientology ethics book. First, read this reference. That's step 1. Step 2, figure out what condition you are in. So then the person will need to look over the conditions by L. Ron Hubbard to see what condition they feel they are in. And it goes from the bottom, which is confusion. And then as you get higher in success, it goes treason, enemy, doubt, non existence, danger, emergency, normal, affluence, power. So those higher ones are the ones you want to get up to. So he's saying, so Julian Schwartz says step 2, find out what condition you're in. So you have to look over the conditions and decide what condition am I in. I just got SA'd and I must be in confusion. Okay. So then Julian Schwartz says on the step 3, it says do the formula for the condition that you're in. So then the Jane Doe has to do the 3 steps of confusion. 1, do a locational, which is a Scientology auditing where you walk around your environment and you look at objects and you look at locations. And this is supposed to extrovert you. Step 2, you're supposed to compare where you are to where you were before. And you're supposed to write this all down and think about it. Then step 3, you do another locational. That's the Scientology auditing again, where you walk around. This is having to do with your mind and how you look at it as a Scientologist, and you see where you are because you're in confusion. Then the next step on the program is do the next condition. So the next step is get through lower conditions. And so when you get to step treason, it's find out that you are. So you have to introspect and find out so for the Jane Doe, it's probably something like, I'm a mother, or I am a Scientologist trying to go up the bridge. That is what I am. And then the next step is formula is enemy. Find out who you really are. So then there's a whole thing about this in the ethics programs. Find out who you really are. When they get to that step enemy, they have to read a number of references about what L. Ron Hubbard says who you really are. And he says you're a immortal being that has lived since before the objective universe has occurred. And he talks about all these different things. So as part of this ethics program, you're figuring out who you are through the works of L. Ron Hubbard. So then you have to, that's enemy condition. You go around, you look, you learn about what L. Ron Hubbard says who you are. Then you write that down. Then you do the doubt formula. That doubt formula has 7 different steps. And as part of this, you have to introspect in yourself and see, am I part of the good group, which is Scientology, or am I part of the WOG world, which L. Ron Hubbard says is the world without civility? Just a bunch of meat bodies, and they're all obsessed with the outside world. That's what he says the WOG world is. So in doubt condition, you have to decide, am I a Scientologist? I want to go up the bridge, or do I want to go be stuck in oblivion and worship other bodies and create other bodies, and have kids and stuff? That's creating bodies. So that's all a body thing. So then she did probably the doubt condition where you decide between the two. There's a part of this in the ethics program. It'll actually say this. If you get hung up at doubt, you have to do false data stripping and potentially confessionals. That's where this confessionals thing comes in. So she's hung up at doubt. She's not sure. Should she go and to live into the mess universe, out there where psychiatry is ruling everything? Or does Jane Doe want to go and be a Scientologist and go up the bridge, and Danny can get whatever internal justice that Danny is going to get, but not the true justice that he deserves, which is getting today. and so on. He does these ethics program. I went off on a tangent there, Jacob.
All good, all good. It definitely cleared some stuff up for me
Yeah, so she
because I've
did the
heard a lot
doubt.
about the conditions. Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
She did the doubt. Now that's not the hardest part of the conditions. The next part of the formula of is liability, and there she has to make up the amends or make up the damage using these amends. And she has to deliver an effective blow to the enemies of the group one is pretending to be a part of despite personal danger. That's step 2 of this liability. So you've got to she has to decide first in the doubt formula. She's made up her mind. I am a Scientologist. I want to go up the bridge. This is what I want from everyone around me and my attorney. Then she gets the liability. She wants to get back in the group. Someone who's just come to Julian Schwartz and said, I was just essayed by Danny Masterson, gets given lower conditions to start from confusion. That is just fucking messed up. That's just fucking messed up. So,
Completely.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, first off, that actually helps me understand a little bit better the way that Scientology conditions work, because I've definitely heard a lot of references just over the last few years since I've started paying attention to Scientology's abuses and allegations of abuses. I've heard a lot of people talk about getting assigned to lower conditions, and I'll hear references made to being assigned a condition of doubt or being assigned a condition of confusion. But hearing you actually talk through what that looks like, going through each of the conditions, that definitely kind of fills in some of the gaps for me. And I see Hans Christian Swartz also said in the chat, never mind that you need to get approval to conclude each step. It's not up to you. And I can only imagine just how the deck is completely stacked against the people who have actually gone through the abuse that's being reported. It's certainly not a fair system of justice, as
Right.
I think
And
more and more
Jane
people are starting
Doe,
to realize.
like you said, Julian Schwartz. See, here's how this all ties together is that Julian Schwartz made this ethics program and forced Jane Doe through it, and then Jane Doe comes out on the other end, goes to the real Justice Department of Justice in America, and gets Danny Masterson put away for good.
It did definitely take a long time though, but I'm glad that it did
Yeah.
ultimately happen because yeah, the
Hmm.
women, as I understand it, it was 2017 when the LAPD actually began investigating, or when it became public news that the LAPD was investigating claims of SA by Danny Masterson, and then even then, it wasn't until 2020 that the Los Angeles District Attorney actually formally indicted him on those charges. So just another example of how the justice system sometimes they do get it right, but it can take a long time. And these legal proceedings, the amount of time that passes between different hearings, the amount of time that passes between a conviction and a sentencing, or the sentencing and the actual relocation from jail to prison, it's
So
it
it's
can
not that
sometimes
the
take a
Jane
frustratingly
Does
long.
are just coming out and attacking Danny Masterson and they're all just getting together and telling a big story about and corroborating. Did this actually happen? They reported on this years ago, is what you're saying, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and even if I'm not mistaken, it was Jane Doe 1's knowledge report that was able to be brought in as evidence in the trials, which I think is a great indicator that no, this was something that she brought up at the time, and it was something that Scientology can't even deny that they were aware of at the time. But of course, the Scientologists who would have had information that they could have brought out in court were not brought into the courtroom, I believe, because the prosecutors, I think, understood that Scientology ethics officers like Julian Swartz and Miranda Scoggins, if they were even able to locate them, would likely lie to defend the church. Because there was one Scientologist who was brought into the courtroom during the first trial who was a good friend of Jane Doe 1's. This is Sean Fabos. And Sean Fabos is the son of two Scientologists who are fairly wealthy. I believe that her father's name is actually his father's name. The last name is Fabos. I'm blanking on their first names right
I'll
now.
look it up
But
while you keep
anyway,
talking.
yeah, go for it. um, he was one of the first people that Jane Doe 1 told about her attack shortly after it happened. And several years later, when Jane Doe 1 went to the police in either 2016 or 2017, the LAPD instructed her to have a phone call with Sean Fabos and try to get him to reveal that he remembers talking about that at the time. And he remembers Jane Doe 1 telling her that she was assaulted by Danny Masterson back in the early 2000s when it happened. And on that phone call, she was able to get him to admit that, yes, he remembers all of that. So, because of this, the district attorney thought that Steve and Peggy, that's right, that's right. So it's their son, Sean Fabos, who was a friend of Jane Doe 1 while they were all in Scientology in the early 2000s. Now she's out, but he is still in. So he was brought in by the prosecution to testify during the first trial, but it was very difficult to get answers out of him because his first instinct was to lie to defend the church. But then the prosecutors were able to go, well, do you remember saying XYZ in a phone call with Jane Doe 1 on this date? And then he would, oh, I don't know. And then they'd say, well, would it help if we showed you the transcript? And they ended up being able to get the answers out of him eventually, but not without him lying about it first. And I think that experience was probably indicative to the prosecutors in the case of what it would be like to see more Scientologists get on the stand, because a Scientologist, as I understand it, is a Scientologist first, and a Scientologist will commit perjury to defend the church, because ultimately doing what Scientology tells you to do is more important than doing what a court of law tells you to do. Would
I
you
would
say that
say
that's
that's
kind of right?
true I would say that's true for people that like diehard Scientologists. I wouldn't say that's true for a lot of Scientologists that are currently practicing, probably because there's so few of them now. But
Got it.
the ones that have kids who are in Scientology or doing Scientology, and the ones that are, donating so much money, and I guess there's not really a definitive who would lie and who wouldn't. But I'm
Yeah, I guess
sure
so.
that the I'm sure that the prosecutor also gained a bunch of information and knowledge by having that first cross
First trial.
examination of the
Oh
person.
yeah. Yeah,
And
of Sean Fabos.
I bet you they just you're right. I think they might have learned their lesson there.
Because one thing I would have loved to have seen Julian Swartz and Miranda Scoggins and Luke Watson, who was a good friend of Danny Masterson's, who was consistently just coming up in all of these women's stories. It would have been really interesting to see what they would have said on the stand. But my suspicion is that if Scientology was able to track them down in order to serve them with a subpoena, that they would likely just lie to defend Danny or to defend the church. So no, they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't make it onto the stand in these trials, but
And
that
I
doesn't
would
mean that
say the
their
way
names
that they
didn't come
would
up.
lie, I think you're right,
Hmm.
Jacob. The way that they would lie is I'm thinking about it like if I was still there. I was a public master at arms just like Julian Swartz. So I dealt with the parishioners that were not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Out there being other intentionists, or they have external influences, like they're being distracted and they're not doing their Scientology. So I used to deal with these type of public. So would I lie for the Church of Scientology? Probably not, but I would, because of my cult background. Scientology would just train me to, I think they would just drill me to answer the questions in a way that's true, but also is not giving all the information.
An acceptable truth.
Yes, and accept is that lying?
Well, I guess that could also be judged kind of on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
But another example that comes to my mind of a time that I've heard of when a Scientologist being asked to lie has to do with allegations of abuse. So, for example, I know that in 2009,
Mm.
the Tampa Bay Times, which was at that time the St. Petersburg Times, began reporting on allegations of abuse by David Miscavige at the international base. And they spoke with Marty Rathbun, and they spoke with Mike Rinder, they spoke with the Headleys and Amy Scobie, and a lot of them talked about some of the abuse that they witnessed, or in the case of Mike Rinder, the abuse that he experienced firsthand. But they also mentioned having seen former executives who were still in the church, people like Guillaume Leserve and Mark Yeager, being beaten. And as soon as that report came out, or actually maybe it was even before the report actually did come out, Scientology responded with affidavits signed by Guillaume and Mark Yeager and other Sea Org executives who were there, saying David Miscavige never laid a finger on any of these people. All of these allegations of abuse are lies. Like, that's the other kind of thing that I know has been alleged
Right,
by
because they
many people who have
probably
left.
Guillaume Lesev, just briefly, he probably thought that David Miscavige did not do this to him. He probably thought he did it because of his own overts and withholds. You know, he was probably doing this new reconditioning and labor force program that David Miscavige invented because in Guillaume Lesev's mind, yes, he was just doing it because of what Guillaume had done to suppress Scientology. I'm sure he believed that too, that he was suppressing Scientology, that he deserved this so-called whole, but is actually in Guillaume's mind is just another version of the RPF. So Guillaume probably would have been happy to say, yes, it was all me. I didn't get sent to a hole, you know, but in reality, I think what you're saying is in the real world and what actually happened is he was put into a camper with a bunch of other people, not fed right and not taken care of healthily, and then just manipulated and physically assaulted through various drills, is what you're saying. So are they lying in viciously? I don't think so.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So in their mind, uh it's a justifiable
Yes,
framing
because that
because
happened
it's
to me. That happened to me, dude. In 2004, I wanted to go to the rehabilitation project force. I wanted to go
really.
because I felt like I was not doing well on my post. And I felt like my mind would keep wandering into the subject of sexual things. And I wanted to look at pornography and stuff like that. And so the they were like, okay, you're banished out of security, physical security, which was from 2000 to 2003. And then there was this a point where I was on my post as a supervisor where I was not doing well. I was sad. And my statistics were often down. I was often in lower conditions for something or another. And I was also put into pig's birthing, which is this where they rip your door off and they put meat in your room and all this stuff. It's like hazing. So I wanted to go to the RPF. So I thought it was all my wrongdoings. That's part of the main thing of Scientology is like your cause over your own condition. Like you're never a victim. So back to the Jane Doe thing is you're never a victim. And when she got reported that she was SA'd by Danny Masterson, Julian Schwartz said there's no victims to her. There's no victims. Whether he showed her a reference or not, he told her point blank, you are not a victim. You caused this. And we're going to show you how. And you're going to do this ethics program and you're going to change your mind. You're going to shut up and you're going to go up the bridge. And Danny Masterson is going to get his auditing or whatever, but it's none of your business. That's what they told Jane Doe.
Exactly. No, I think that you're right on there about exactly how everything went down here. I see we've got Leo Perez in the chat from
Oh,
Facebook. Hi, Leo. It's good to see you. But oh my goodness, yeah, the degree that they will go to silence people and convince them that bad things that happen to them are their fault, it's really awful.
Yeah.
And actually, you were bringing up some. You brought up some stuff earlier about the non-interpolation order. There's a piece that I see from 2021 about one of the pre-trial hearings. Let me see if I can actually pop it in so we could look at it, because I'm curious to hear if that sounds like what you're talking about here. I'm still getting used to how to use StreamYard, everybody. So give me a moment as I'm trying to
You're
figure
fine.
it
We're
out
at
here.
like 35 minutes.
Oh,
We've
okay,
talked
right
about
on,
this for a while.
right on.
We were
But
on liability. I'll talk about liability while you figure out, unless you're ready.
yeah, it looks like it should be ready to go here.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's in the, I
Oh,
think it's
let me
popped
put it
into
on
the
there.
waiting room if you're able to. Yeah, yeah. Do we want to make
Let me,
put our faces on the
mhm.
side so that we can, yeah, perfect. So looking through that, are you scrolling down through there now, or can I
No,
scroll
you
through?
have to do it,
Oh, okay, right on.
but you
So
don't have
what
to look
this
at the
is,
camera or me.
gotcha. So what we're looking at here is a piece from The Underground Bunker, written by Tony Ortega in May of 2021. And in May of 2021 is when the pretrial hearings were going on. This is essentially when the prosecutors were still presenting evidence to the judge, evidence that would later be brought into a trial in front of a jury. But there's no jury in the courtroom during this hearing. And during this hearing, prosecuting attorney Deputy DA Reinhold Mueller was questioning Jane Doe 1, and we can go ahead and pick up right here. It says Mueller then asks Jane Doe 1 about the NDA she signed in 2004. She was 27 or 28 at the time, she explained. This was after the DA declined charges. Was there any involvement of the Church of Scientology in that signing? Yes. How so? And then here's where some of the information where she starts to get into what may refer to the non-interpolation agreement. I'm not sure. But it says the attorney from the church, Kendrick Moxon, arrived at my parents' house in July or August 2004, and he came with a handwritten letter from Danny Masterson. Go inside and read it, Moxon told her. Then he went to speak with her father. Jane Doe 1 says that Moxon actually described the deal he was proposing to her father as a way to keep your daughter, unlike what had happened to him. And Tony includes a little reference there that Moxon's daughter, Stacy Moxon, committed suicide by throwing herself on an electric transformer at Scientology's secret gold base. Moxon explained that there was a declare order for Jane Doe 1 already typed up and on Julian Swartz's desk, and if she signed the NDA regarding her allegations about Masterson, they would not, or excuse me, they would give her the declare in return for her signature. We're going to see how to work out not to lose your daughter, she says, Moxon told her father. And Jane Doe 1 says she was told this was happening because her parents were such good donors to the church, and this was a favor to them.
Wow.
So to make sure that we understand, and that people understand everything that's being discussed here, Kendrick Moxon is an attorney representing the church. He has a letter from Danny Masterson. Jane Doe 1 has to read the letter, and then Moxon explains to Jane Doe 1's father that there's a declare order for Jane Doe 1 already typed up and on Julian Swartz's desk. So a declare order, that means that they're essentially ready to declare Jane Doe 1 a suppressive person, kick her out of the church, sever her relationships with all Scientologist family members and Scientologist friends. But if she signs the NDA regarding her allegations about Masterson, then they'd give her the declare in return for her signature, so that she would not, so that she would then be able to stay in Scientology. Am I kind of right in how I'm interpreting what that's all saying here?
Yes, you're nailing it.
Right on. So it's things like that that I think that a lot of judges might not be able to make sense of in a legal setting right away, because there's just so much that goes into Scientology as far as the duress that goes into signing these agreements and the real implications of speaking out about these agreements. Because Jane Doe 1, as well as the other women in the case, were essentially faced with a choice of, do I come forward about what I experienced to law enforcement, meaning knowing that I'll lose my family and friends, or do I just play by Scientology's rules and do what they want me to do, which is
I can see
sign
how it
these documents
happened.
and stay. You can see how it
So
happened.
she's either going to sign this NDA or she's going to get declared suppressive person, which means in the Church of Scientology you're expelled and you're shunned by everyone. You're all your family, and anyone, whoever does anything to do with Scientology or any connections that they may have as well, like businesses, other people that businesses like parishioner businesses, and then their businesses they deal with, because suppressive persons can't be connected to any of those people. That's a whole lot of people when you're dealing with your family and all your tight knit connections just to make money in the world. So you're talking about your livelihood, not just being declared suppressive. Oh, you're kicked out. Who cares? But it's being removed from all of these connections that you were using to live, essentially. So they're saying you can go and not live, or you can be with us and shut your damn mouth.
Completely. And well, unfortunately, in this case, Scientology was able to essentially successfully keep these women silent for a long time. But thankfully, here we are in 2023, and Danny Masterson has been convicted. He's been sentenced. And as of today, he has been relocated from jail to prison.
Yes, he has.
And there's that mugshot again. As I understand it, that mugshot was just taken today. Oh, no worries. And so we've got some friends who have joined in the chat. I see the inappropriate hyphen. I see Catherine. Thank you for joining us. Glad you all were able to join. Yeah, to be honest, I was shaving right before we got on here too. Is that this article just came out just within the last couple of hours, and as soon as that article came out, I got a text from Lou just within a few minutes, and he was like, "You want to talk about this today?" I was like, "Oh, I haven't shaved in a few days. Give me a sec."
Absolutely. This has been fun, Jacob. Let's do it again. We can talk about Danny Masterson all the time.
Yeah, totally.
And all this
for sure.
stuff and like really get down to all the details. But,
oh, you know what? It looks like there is one question.
Yeah.
Jose says, can you explain what they meant when they mentioned something about a past Scientologist committing S word? Do I know what you mean by S word? I'm not sure if she meant to say R word, or I'm not sure. Do you know if you know what they're asking there?
I don't know what he means.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Jose.
Yeah, sorry, man. Ask us again. In the next one, maybe we'll be on tonight with some more news about various cases from Jacob A. Harkey on Twitter, X. And this is Louis from Leaving Scientology. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to put on our ending credits.
Thank you, everybody. Oh, did it work?
Did you want to say something?
Oh,
we're still live.
Thank you. Say TV. SP what?
SP is me.
That's a good one. SP is me. SP is me. I'm a proud SP. Hey, proud SP.
I gotta go to
I know you. I think I know you guys. Oh my.
How you been? He's 5'1". He's shorter than you.
You
don't know who he is.
He's LAPD, man. Me and William have to have a talk about.
Where is he?
He's
down there.
He's
down there.
Trying to see Frank.
His following the Following the cops.
Film the police.
Film the police, yeah.
Film the police.
It's unbelievable. Proud SP.
I like your sweatshirt.
Is your name Matt? Oh my
yeah.
God, Matt from Celebrity Center, like 10 years ago.
Whoa.
Matt, I'm a proud SP. Matthew. Woo! Proud SP. Get out of that Sea Org. Oh my God, it's my dad, Bill Anderson. That's my dad. That is my dad.
Your
Somebody
dad?
film this. Jack,
Oh my
come
God.
here. Dad.
Laura's dad?
Dad.
Film him,
Mr.
dude.
Anderson?
Yes.
Bill Anderson. Oh my God.
Mr.
He's
Anderson, don't you want to
literally
talk to your daughter?
That is my father. That is my
Mr. Anderson, don't you want to see your daughter who you haven't talked to in years? She's saying she loves you.
You got to yell it out, dude. Yell it out, man.
That is Mr. Anderson, your daughter is here and she loves you.